We'll call this meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hi, Evelyn. Come on in.
Hello.
Appreciate you all being here. How you doing, Evelyn? Good. All right. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
I like that motion.
We have a second. We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on February 29th, 2016. We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Non-action items. Update on park projects. Mr. Williams.
Sir, Mayor, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we're actually starting to wrap up a lot of our projects. Of course, the splash pad being our biggest one. There's some little tweaking and some adjustments that Vortec needs to do, but for all intents and purposes, the installation of the splash pad is done. We are doing the exterior landscaping, where we put in 8,300 square feet of sod, Bermuda grass sod, around the perimeter where the old fountain used to sit. And then we do have a beach area, as I call it, a sandbox area, and then also there's artificial turf as a barrier between that sandbox, the splash pad, and it's supposed to go underneath the shade structure. We utilized a local contractor, Fast Cats Landscaping, to do the work, and we are running into some difficulties with the artificial turf. Honestly, I would say there's about a 90% chance it's not going to be installed by our grand opening. In our contract, we do have liquidated damages clauses in there that we will be pursuing. And the contractor knew when he took this job that he had to have it done by July 1st. He was low bid. He'd done work for the city before. And we stressed to him 3 or 4 times, Wyatt had, Dennis had, I had, the contract did, stressed that it had to be done, but he's full aware of the implications of this.
What's the reason?
Just simply waited too long before he ordered the turf.
Is that Mr. Cunning?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
But other than that, the work is good. The curbing out there he installed is good. The Parks Department put in some sidewalk extensions. Their solar lights are illuminating that area, and we should be. We can still use the splash pad. It's not very aesthetically pleasing. Also, with that artificial turf, it'll help cut down on some of the dirt and debris that gets tracked in there. And that's one of the reasons we're having to backwash 3-4 times a day. It's just from the dirt and debris. But the grass has helped cut down on that. Once we get the rest of the turf in, we can. A lot of the issue, I guess you would say, with the artificial turf too is our location. It's just not readily available. It's not like indoor outdoor carpet. It's synthetic grass. But on that, our grand opening is at 4 p.m. on July 4th. I hope everybody's staying here in town.
I'll be there.
Come on out there. We will need assistance serving Coke floats or root beer floats and potentially even Dr. Pepper floats. Snow cones too. Snow Bliss is going to be offering free snow cones out there for an hour or 2, just to draw people out to the park. But we're going to be setting up over. I just remembered I needed to get with Dennis on something. It'll happen tomorrow. Dennis loves me.
I'm sure.
Actually, we're going to be setting up on the north side of the splash pad where the pump room's at, because we have access to electricity. We'll have a microphone. The mayor will need to say a couple of words. We'll provide you some bullet points. We're not going to have tables set up out there. They actually weren't really utilized during the grand opening of the playground equipment, but we will have some chairs out there. But just to have people come out there and see it. And Of course, Mr. Price over there had asked if we could fence it off to allow an adult-only period out there at the splash pad, but unfortunately, I think we're outnumbered by the younger generation. But if you haven't been out there to even see it, the only time I've been out there where nobody's been playing on it is early in the morning. Right now, it's programmed to run from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. I don't know after dark if people are actually using it or not, but we'll be making little bitty adjustments to the schedule. Getting a rule sign posted out there too, that's another one of our small projects, just to finish that project out. But we will be winding down on a lot of the parks improvements in this next fiscal year. We're looking at restroom remodels for our athletic fields. In addition to that, we've completed the project of rewiring the softball field and the baseball field. It is all overhead wiring now. We chose not to go underground just due to the economy and the cost of that, but we needed lights. We were dealing with underground infrastructure that was 30 or 40 years old, and gophers that have very sharp teeth and for some reason love insulation. I know we're still working on the gopher problems out at the park and also even out at the ball fields. Whoever can figure that issue out will make $1 million. It's
Really,
filling
is that
holes.
for real?
Yeah, they could. They have the potential to make a lot
Is
of
that
money.
an offer?
But that's where we stand at. Of course, the economy's down. We're being very cautious as far as proceeding with general fund projects. But we still want to get some things done over this next fiscal year.
Great.
Dennis, has the trash problem, has there been a problem with the splash pad now open? Has trash been an issue?
Not a lot around the splash pad. There's some every morning, water bottles and stuff, but we have more people out there. We're getting more trash on the roads and over around the volleyball. Seems like a lot out there. Sunday around 6 o'clock, and 97 cars parked in there,
Okay.
and 20 or 30 run around with the music playing. It was a lot of people out there.
That is one thing. Talking about cars, we did finish the speed bump installation out there.
Very nice.
I think we're going to add a couple more. We have some pretty good gaps, and I know when we have available funding, we'll be adding some more. But
Great.
it's really slowed it down out there quite a bit.
That's good.
I made it up to the splash pad a couple of evenings, and the biggest problem I saw out there were little kids taking mud, dirt, and piling it down onto the heads. And as a matter of fact, I went over there and talked to the parents because they were standing right next to them. They wouldn't say anything to those kids.
They go right into
Put the
our
bears?
drain and into our underground tank.
Oh, okay.
That tank is all we, that's, goes right.
Right.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So that goes right into our underground tank.
Mm-hmm.
When that water gets all murky, it goes into, recirculates into our two sand filters. That's why we're having to do it 3 or 4 times a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I explained to James, and he said he was going to get with you, but that was the biggest problem. Are we still going to have that, you think, with the sand being out there?
Well, a while ago, since we just put the sand in this morning, it was kind of funny. We was out working on the basketball court, getting ready for the tournament, and there was probably 12, 15 kids out there, and not one of them on the splash pad. It was all in the sand. Playing, they had buckets and everything, digging and playing, and then
And that's what it's for.
they all got up and ran right over there to it, with the sand on the floor.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to avoid the dirt with the grass and the turf installation. It's going to decrease that mud. The sand's a little bit different, but we're hoping that with the sand, with that artificial turf, it's going to get a lot of it off their feet. But
Good.
it's
Could we use some kind of signage out there saying?
that's one of the yes, ma'am. That's one of the things we're going over the list of the rules that we're going to have posted on the sign. That's one of them. Don't track mud, bring sand over here onto the splash pad, and we've been educating the public. I know when we first started operating it, we had some times of low pressure, and that's because the filters were getting clogged up, and a lot of folks, they would email us, they would contact us and say, hey, look, something's wrong, we have low pressure, and we explain to them when that happens, contact us. minutes, because the filters just need to be back, plus you go out there. Once the crew gets out there, it's just a matter of minutes, and you've got geysers flowing in, so.
Can I make a suggestion? If you do have some signage out there, could you make it in English and Spanish? And just don't use Anna, maybe Carolina Wyatt to translate for you, and so just make sure we get it right. No, but the signage, I think is a good idea to be in Spanish, because
Have you messed up? Is there a reason why they're asking for alternative?
no, I'm just saying.
No,
Dennis.
we can, that probably wouldn't, that's actually not a bad idea.
Dennis, you mentioned that you were out at the park today getting the basketball goals ready. What did you do? There were some kids that actually just walked in with me. They were at the chamber looking for Ellen. She wasn't there, and they wanted to know if they can get new nets because the nets are torn.
We already have new nets. They're gonna have a tournament there on the 4th. We haven't put them up yet.
And
Same.
Now
they-
they're just restriking.
Okay, and they wanted to know if they could get some benches or some bleachers out there for the audience.
That's,
I got about 10 bleachers I'm gonna put out there already,
Good,
and,
good.
yeah.
and well, that's mainly for the lizard race and
Okay.
2 for the volleyball. The problem with most, or even some of my bleachers, they're not in the best condition. So.
That's what he was asking. He just wanted to know if he could get some bleachers out there for either his players or for the family
I
members.
can at least put some, some benches. I got some of those that are not being used right now.
Yeah, so maybe just something just so they could sit on, but that's what they were asking. They were actually, that's the people that were looking for Anna when we walked in, so.
What kind of tournament is it?
3-on-3 is what he said?
Oh, yeah?
3-on-3 basketball.
I don't know. We just found out. We're trying to get ready now.
Okay, cool. Anything else, James?
No, sir.
All right. Let's go on to the action items. Let's consider recommendation of athletic facility use policy and agreement, James.
Sir. Let me fix something here real quick. One of the things, we have our general liability insurance through travelers, and about 2 or 3 times a year, they come out and perform site visits. And the last time that they were out here, they focused on our parks and mainly our recreation and athletic fields. One of the items that they did bring up that they wanted us to address was some type of a user agreement and an indemnification clause for our leagues to actually utilize those fields. We've had a couple of incidents out there where somebody's gotten hurt. They filed a claim against the city, a tort notice against the city. One, for instance, there was a young man who was climbing around on a soccer goal and slipped, fell, and he cut himself, and they filed a tort notice against the city. Which a tort notice, it's a lawsuit. It's a notice that they're fixing to proceed with litigation against the city. When that occurs, we contact travelers because part of our insurance is they will pay for the damages and whatnot if it's found feasible in a court of law. Come to find out that the soccer goal, it wasn't even owned by the city. This was owned by one of the leagues. There was some equipment with one of the leagues that they left out there. And so it's to prevent that practice from there. But also we've had some conflicts with schedules as far as like with, I guess you would say we have more organizations than we have fields. We have overlapping I guess, sports programs. And sometimes some individuals assume that they can use the fields and they make plans and they don't check out. So this athletic field use policy, which we would like your recommendation to send forward to commission for their review and discussion and adoption. It addresses the ways that you reserve fields, also the general use. But I kind of have a summary on the PowerPoint, but this is just the regulations, the permitting process, how we schedule it, who's prioritized. In addition, how do we revoke permits? So one of in the definition clause, and this has gone to the city attorney for him to review, and he did have some questions about, the nonprofit definition. He also had questions about the prioritizing. But a resident, that's somebody who lives within the city limits. We also included, since this board is made up with one ETZ representative, an individual who resides in the ETZ. Nonprofit, or I'm sorry, youth, anybody who's under 18 or under. But we also have the nonprofit definition. You know, a lot of people complain that they're a nonprofit, but actually to be a true legitimate 501c3, I think there's another form out there. You do have to be registered with the IRS, but also registered with the state of New Mexico. However, we do have some, like, is the Baseball League a registered nonprofit with the state of New Mexico?
Yes.
Really? They are?
Truthfully, I have no
Okay.
idea. I know we file taxes every year, but I don't
Okay,
even know.
it's you probably have an exempt status. They're
Yes.
probably a nonprofit organization. But even if you have, so I think one thing that we could look at is if you have bylaws or a mission statement that basically indicates you are a nonprofit, non-commercial, non-money-making enterprise, that could be acceptable for a nonprofit. Because it does take some work, it takes some attorneys, and it takes a lot of time to get your nonprofit status. So one of the other things that we have, wrong computer, the priority process. I did borrow this from another, I think it was a municipality in Northern California. I kind of liked how they had it whenever we have groups who maybe on April 22nd want to reserve the softball field. Generally it's been a first come, first serve. We have our traditional seasons such as baseball, soccer, but if we have somebody who wants to throw together a soccer tournament, but yet at the same time a softball tournament, how do we identify those priorities? So a group one priority in city-sponsored or co-sponsored events. Group two, it would be a nonprofit youth program, and it has to benefit, the league has to be composed of at least 75% Lovington residents. Not that we've had this happen before where we've had the Abilene Youth Soccer Association want to have a traveling tournament here. I don't know, but we just, one thing we consider is we want to make sure that, one, the youth have a priority, but also people who live here are more apt to spend their tax dollars here in Lovington, and that's what pays for those fields. So we want to make sure that our residents have a priority. Of course, group three would be a nonprofit adult program. 4 would be a youth organization or event who may not meet that nonprofit status, and then group 5 is your adult programs. So whenever the permitting process, one is they would have to sign off and agree to follow the athletic field use rules and regulations, which we'll cover here in a few moments, but they would have an application that has the agreement recognizing they're going to follow the rules, they're going to follow these procedures, they're going to agree to everything, they're going to hold the city harmless and indemnify us. They will have to provide proof of insurance. Your organized leagues will have some type of event insurance or league insurance. They'll just need to provide us copies of that, and also name the city as an additional insured. Also, one thing that I'm really torn about is submitting a roster from that organization. The problem you have with that, as a parent, I would not want my child's name, because the minute that piece of paper hits City Hall, it becomes public record. So now they do this in California. You have to provide them rosters so they can prove that these people are residents of that community. Another thing is just maybe an affidavit from the board, the organization, that certifies that at least 75% or this certain percentage of players reside within the city limits of Lovington. And I think that would be safer.
For Lovington residents only?
For a priority process in the event of a tie, just to make sure. Yeah, I don't want to restrict it just to Lovington.
It's like I have a bunch
But-
of Tatum kids playing.
And that's fine, We just want to make sure that in the event somebody submits something at the same time, we have proof that it's going to benefit predominantly our Lovington residents. And that's all. But that's something that we could easily take out. And just if it comes down to it, we could request that. But I don't think that submitting players' names, unless they're adults, but with youth, we don't have the ability to protect the names of those children. We wouldn't be releasing identifiable information other than their name, and I'm talking about like birth dates and stuff like that.
James?
Yes, sir.
If I may, this is gonna be a real loaded question for you. All right?
Sure.
So speaking of protecting the children, and I'm only bringing this up because I've gotten some complaints from our stakeholders on the school board recently where there's been, I guess, a contract coach that was using an assistant to, I guess, hold practices, even some tournaments, some fundraising. And this person was allegedly, apparently, a registered sex offender. Do we have anything in place, some kind of a safety netting that would prohibit or make sure that we catch something like that before they're involved with some of the kids in our fields, our facilities, and so forth? You understand what I'm saying? You
Yes,
understand
sir.
the question?
Yes, no, I totally understand. I think I might have a partial answer.
Okay.
I don't believe that we can limit a registered sex offender from being on the field. Now, the leagues,
I was about to
each
say.
of those, I know for like baseball and soccer, and I'm sure that for football and softball, it's the same thing. All of those coaches have to go through a vetting process that includes a background check. At least I know whenever my wife was coaching, she had to. And I've been told that's why they sometimes have problems with that. I don't know that we can restrict that because then we would start interfering with their civil rights. Just like if unless the judge, and I'm not too, you're probably more familiar with sex offender laws given your law enforcement background.
Thank you.
You're a law-
Make sure you explain. I was like, excuse me?
Yeah, you're a law-
Were you talking about yourself? Was that
yes,
good?
your law enforcement background. But I don't know.
Press,
that
make
we
sure
could-
you said law enforcement.
I don't know that we could actually prohibit somebody because, okay, you can't coach, but who's to say that same individual couldn't go and watch a game?
But if you're a sex offender, you're not allowed to be around children.
I don't know if that's true.
In certain instances, I mean, you can't
Certain
reside.
instances, right.
in-
Couldn't you put it like in your deal where you not require, but you would suggest for every league to get a background check on all your, because I get a background check on everybody that's a coach. So I have to have those before, but not every league in this town, I know why the reason why you're saying it, is not every league in this town does that.
And it wasn't an actual coach, it was somebody who helped the coach. But they pretty much turned everything over to this person. And at one point, this person even had keys to gyms. And they were holding their own, tournaments and fundraisers and practices. And so, and that person violated their own
Their terms and all that.
probation.
Mm.
And so,
I'll talk
I'm
to
curious.
I'll talk to Patrick and see if we can do that, but I think we may be limited because who's to say then, and I don't know that much about the limitations. I guess it is in their conditions of the role, whether they can be around children, but I don't know if we could prohibit them from actually getting on the field.
Right.
Just
No, I
even watch the
understand.
game. But I'll definitely check with Patrick on it. That's a very legit question. And I mean, I would like to see that protection.
I think the schools are having to deal with that now, so I don't want us to fall in that
Okay.
same predicament.
I'll load that now.
How long did it take for them to find that out, folks?
I think the people in the community knew it a long time ago, and they just came to the surface, but they didn't know because there was no vetting process, only for the coaches, but not for the assistants or anybody else that helped out. So we kind of slipped into the cracks.
Well, moving along, you can make multiple use reservations such as for leagues. Baseball, it runs for a couple of months. So the reservation would allow you to reserve it for several weeks. There are certain deadlines that have to be met. And should you miss that, the space will be released on a first come, first served basis. One of the things that people that will be made aware of is that once you submit it, it doesn't automatically mean that you're approved. That we do have to go through, make sure all the paperwork's in process. But during that time, a lot of folks, we encourage people to utilize those fields. I know that Rubio called me today and said, did you know anything about this softball clinic that they have going? We didn't. it really did, it did interfere with his ability to get some work done out there, but as we clarify with each other, work around them. Don't do the work while they're out there, but work around their schedule. We want the public to use it. However, when somebody has a field reserved, individuals can still use that, but if it's reserved, they have to leave the field. We had an incident with that where we had one league utilizing those fields. This other league decided they could go out there and practice, and it was causing some safety concerns. So this will help to eliminate some of that. However, we will require that the organized leagues provide us scheduled game schedules, and also any times that they want to utilize those fields for practice.
This function that you're talking about, did they have it reserved?
No,
Oh, okay.
it was just during the day, and like shortly after that, I found out the league starts on Thursday, and I just barely found out. I figured I'd be the first person to know. Like, I would like to know.
Oh, the men's and the co-ed? I knew that. They didn't tell you?
Nobody has contacted City Hall about a men's or an adult league. So this will help with that process. So,
Nice.
okay, fees. Problem we have is that some groups, some individuals who utilize the fields, they trash them. I'll be completely honest with you. They say, well, there's not enough trash cans. The trash cans are there, but it's the same problem everywhere, just as like out at our park. People don't utilize the trash cans. They don't pick up after themselves. So what we came up with is a very fair, what I feel is a very fair $10 per day of use deposit. Now, we have to get that 10 days in advance before you start using it, and it will be refunded. However, you have to make sure that you abide by all the rules, regulations, pertinent city codes. Now, what does it cost to actually operate these fields? So what I did was I looked at utilities. That's by far, in addition to salary, our largest expense. This is just the electric bill. We don't meter the water out there, but the utilities per day broke down by the fields. That's what you're looking at. The Love Street baseball fields, and it's $22 a day. So really being charged a $10 a day deposit just to help police up after yourself is a very fair deposit. If you clean up after the people who are out there and use it, you help. Basically, it's helping put the responsibility on these leagues and associations to help police our own people, to make sure that they're taking care of what we pour a lot of money in, $158 a day throughout the year, to make sure it's being taken care of, so we can utilize that money to make other improvements. But like I said, the deposit would be refunded in the event of a leak. They would put that deposit up, and if everything's good, they're following those rules, we would refund that at the end of the year. There are some limitations in here on refunds, which we'll get into in just a few minutes. But cancellations. If the city has to cancel it due to ongoing work out of the facility, if there's health and safety concerns, such as, we've got a hurricane bearing down on the city, we would either make every attempt to reschedule that event with those folks to accommodate that use, or wind up just refunding that deposit in full. However, we can also cancel it. Let's just say, for instance, we go out and I don't know, there's a lighting problem, and one of the league folks decides they want to try to fix it themselves, and they wind up causing $1,500 worth of damage. The deposit's probably not going back to them. In addition to that, they will get charged what it costs to actually fix it after we do the investigation. If you have to cancel within 5 days in order to get your deposit back. If not, it'll be done on a case-by-case basis. Inclement weather for league play, we won't provide a refund. I mean, it's just hit or miss. But we're willing to work with the leagues. And then, of course, individuals, inclement weather or one-time use, we can provide those refunds as well. Field exchanges. Every once in a while, we ran into this situation where we had a softball event and also soccer event, where we did an exchange. Okay, we can use the field during this time. That's great, but everything will be done in writing. You can't make that exchange without it going to city, because the city will then issue a new permit, because that's the one thing is that the league president, directors, whoever's in charge, they have to be aware that permit has to be on the field with them. Whenever that field's in use, that permit has to be readily available, because if it's not, they'll be asked to leave. Especially if there's somebody else needing to use that field and they have a valid permit. We have to be notified of that non-use, and we can work out refunds of deposits, but if you decide to reserve the field for the month of February, and then you decide not to use it, the permit will be revoked, and it could also inhibit your ability to get permits like that in the future, because especially if we have that increased demand. So allocation, of course, using priority. We won't allocate it regardless of if it's a competitive level of skill. And what I mean, let's say that we've got a semi-pro team coming in to play baseball, and it's Evelyn's baseball league playing. Just because the semi-pro team's going to bring people into town, we're not going to say, hey, this takes priority. We're not going to do that. It'll still be on the first come, first serve. But we also have historical periods where we have league sports played, such as baseball. It starts in April and goes through like almost the end of May. That's a historical. Soccer, it starts in the fall. So we'll still make those accommodations based on that, on those historical time periods. But for instance, this year, I know that Evelyn, she always is good about letting us know this is the start period of her baseball. The Soccer Association, they're really good. 6 months in advance, they reserve the fields for use. So this is going to help prevent some of that because it's planning. But also the 3 strikes you're out kind of rule. If you look under the allocation procedures, which I believe is on, it's actually, this is on page 4 towards the top. Fields not being utilized for the schedule as provided 3 times during a regular season. Those fields will be reassigned if there's a demand for them. So if for some reason Evelyn has reserved all of the commercial fields and 3 times she just didn't use them on those scheduled days, we have somebody else, those fields will be opened up for use. Unless it's really a communication thing with City Hall and with Rubio to let us know. So some rules and regulations that we have come up with is one, a group of 10 or more has to get a permit. Pretty much, if it's 10 or more, it's granted it may just be a pickup game. However, if that group of 20 people go out there, they don't have a permit, and if it's just they're inviting teams from elsewhere, they really need to get a permit because that's just a large group gathering. That's something that we could actually easily fix. However, just because there's 20 of them there and Evelyn's baseball team of 12 people show up to practice and they have those fields reserved, it's not a numbers game. Whoever has the field reserved. It makes a lot of sense. But we're not going to grant reservations to anybody a group of 10 or less on the other hand. In addition to that, the president or individual listed as being in charge is going to be ultimately held responsible for making sure that the rules and regulations are followed by their players and their coaches, and also the parents. Use begins and ends at the time stated on the permit. So if you have like a weekend tournament, you put down that we want to reserve the field from 12 noon on Friday to 12 noon on Sunday. That also includes any setup and cleanup time. Because if the crews go out there at 4 o'clock and you're still out there, it may not be a problem unless there's some overlapping sports. In addition to that, we have parking in designated areas only. No, unless we grant prior approval, vehicles don't need to be driven onto the fields, even up to the concession stand. One of the problems that we see, I've seen several times at the softball field, we'll have individuals go up there and practice, but they'll park their vehicles up in by the concession stand, and that needs to stop. It's an accident waiting to happen, as far as I'm concerned. I can understand with them unloading a concession stand, things like that, but safety is one of those high priorities. We want to make sure that our kids are safe. Of course, following the city ordinance, alcohol, drugs, narcotics, consumption, possession, it's absolutely prohibited. So we ran into this, there's rumors going around, but selling of food or other items has to be approved by the city. Okay, and all we're going to do is say, yes, you can operate the concession stand. However, that organization has to get all of the permits required by the state or other enforcement agencies. It's limited to nonprofit users. In addition, the proceeds have to directly benefit the organization. It cannot go to an individual, and the city has the right to inspect the league's financial records. There's allegations been made that there's folks out there who their family members are running this concession stand and keeping the profits. Other leagues that I've talked to, their concession stands, that helps run that league. That's how they pay umpires. That's how they do trophies, all that good stuff. Granted, they also charge the players a fee to play. But this has to directly benefit the organization. And the reason being is this is an anti-donation issue. And what I'm talking about in the New Mexico Constitution, they have what's called an anti-donation clause, which means that the city can't provide the concession stand to that individual to make a profit off, because we are basically donating city services for free. And we're not charging for this. Even if we did charge, still, we would have to charge such a high amount to eliminate that whole anti-donation issue. But also at the same time, this is to promote, I guess, improvements in the league, so they can get that new equipment. But this is one thing that I would really like to see, so we can avoid that issue in the future. You can't charge entry or admission. That's an anti-donation issue. Now, you can't ask for donations. There's nothing wrong with that.
Which we
But
got
the
that
donation,
definition, right?
yes, we did do that. We recommended that. But that donation cannot be contingent upon you entering the field, because then you're charging admission. So you can't ask for donations. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Anything, like balls or equipment that maybe goes on to adjacent property owners, you need to make sure that you have permission from that property owner. Really, that's a civil matter between whoever's making the trespass, but we just want to kind of remind people to do the right thing. Portable goals and markers have to be maintained in a safe and operable condition, and they can't be stored. When they're stored, they have to be stored in a safe manner to avoid that incident where that child got injured. But also, once the permits expire, it has to be taken off site. Also, after each game or practice or game, the user group has to make sure that they police the area for trash or debris. I can understand, and granted, we do have some folks who go there after games, they'll leave litter, but if we go up there, and I always remember this commercial when I was a kid, where it shows that big field just littered with trash and the Indian who shed a tear. There's been a couple of times where I felt like that, but I was fully clothed, unlike the Indian.
Thank you for that.
But yes, granted, yes. But I've seen that occur. Sometimes you go up there and the fields are just absolutely trashed, just much like our parks as well. Also, damages to facilities. If something is broken or something gets damaged, it needs to be reported to the city immediately, because if after we look at it, if it was caused by the actions of that organization or individual who has permitted that field, they could actually be responsible for full cost or replacement. And then, we can close them due to inclement weather. That's really more of a league thing, though. They're really good about weather. Lining of fields, we want Rubio on them to make sure they're doing that. If the leagues want to line them, that is something that they have to get permission in advance for Rubio and his crew. Also, permanent structures or equipment. Really, we don't want somebody going out there and thinking, hey, this would be a good spot to build a restroom or a concession stand. If it is, it can't be used just for the baseball league. It has to be dedicated for public use after that, so. And then, of course, this is another one the insurance company just absolutely stressed. Coaches, refs, and umpires have to have current concussion protocol training. They have to, and they've got different, I have not yet looked to find out where they offer these classes, but that is one thing that our insurance carriers stress. You need to really force this, push this issue. It's just so important, and it's really come to the forefront, is that you have to have people out there training. And I know it's hard enough to get coaches and umpires, but this is something that the insurance industry is really pushing.
This is huge, I know. And I know the Hopkins Boys and Girls Club did away with their football program because of this. And so, I know it's big, but is there any, do you see a need for the city to be notified in case there is a concussion? Number one, that it is followed, protocol is followed, that the participant is taken care of. And I know we're indemnified, but can we make sure that we're made aware of that, just to make sure that the proper protocol is being followed? I know they have the training in place, but do they actually implement that training? Because
That's a good Patrick question.
Yeah.
I really don't know if that's necessary, or if that increases or if it increases or reduces our risk for liability. But I'll definitely ask Patrick.
I just want to make sure that we as a city do the right thing as much as we can.
Yes, sir.
To make sure that the protocol is being followed. Because it is on our property.
Yes, sir.
On our facilities.
But that is the application in a nutshell.
The one before it, you know, where the permanent or structures, equipment, on the fields on commercial, I rent a trailer to sell concession as
It's
a
not a permanent. That's a temporary. If the baseball league would like to build a concession stand out there, the city would graciously,
Oh, now it's
Donate the
graciously in, okay.
we would donate the area for you guys to build that concession stand.
What about a taco truck?
No, you know, the concession trailer, I have no issues with that, because that concession stand project, that's a little bit lower on the list as far as priorities, getting the fields upgraded.
Let me ask this question.
Sure.
Since it's on your, not priorities, like behind the shelf, why wouldn't the city pay for the baseball league? Like, I'm paying a fee to rent a trailer to put it out there when you're not the one that has concession stand out there, not me.
I don't understand the question.
Why do I have to pay for it, a fee to get a concession trailer out there when it was your job to make sure we had a concession?
There's no guarantees that we're not saying we have to have concession,
There was, but it's not in working order.
but we're not saying you have to have concessions.
We're just offering it, basically,
We're offering it free of use.
the space.
Right. We're offering the space.
I tried. I just
I
wanted
know
to see
you
if I could
tried.
get myself out of that.
$199 a day, that's why.
Well, I mean, we get it for nothing. We pay $100 for about 2.5 months, so, and that's because the chamber's nicely to let us use it, but, I'm sure that service will one day end, and I just wanna make sure that by then, we have a concession.
It's actually this board, when we were looking at priorities, I think that was the lowest priority on restrooms and concessions.
No, that one was the first one, the one that was not, was the love field.
I disagree. It was softball field, the Love Street field, and then the commercial field.
Well, the Love Street one has one, the nice one, we just don't have bathrooms,
It
but
has
the
to be
one on
remodeled.
commercial has
But that
none
was,
either.
that was the priority, was to replace or upgrade the Love Street field.
So, board members, Victoria, do you have any issues, comments, suggestions? Okay, Marlon?
I have a question on, you said about the soccer starts in the fall. I know this summer they had soccer and softball that was a conflict. Are they gonna go back to the fall with the soccer?
It will be what the plan is, and thank you for bringing that up, is once it gets from here, I wanted to have the discussion with city commission. But then at the same time, I was going to meet with each one of the leagues and explain to them, this is what we're gonna be doing. To let them know that those reservations, we're gonna honor the traditional leagues. Now, I know that we had the softball league that started back up again. But for many years, we've gone by the premise that we could just go out there and utilize the fields. And that's where we ran into that conflict. With soccer, we had 6 months in advance requested the fields from this time to this time. And by all rights, they actually had those fields. Granted, it was on a softball field. That was the argument. We don't have the space right now. It's a good thing, but it's a bad thing that we're having to use softball fields and baseball fields for soccer and football. It's just, we don't have the space or the fields set up now. It is in our long-term plan to develop those sites so we can eliminate overlapping usage. But we are going to visit with each one of those leagues to go over these rules and let them know this is how it's going to be. You're going to have to do this. Regardless, this is how we have to do this, so we can avoid those conflicts.
Well, I was just thinking that if it went back to the soccer being in the fall, that would reduce some of the conflict of having all the sports in the spring.
Well, they actually were doing like I know at one time, soccer was doing 2 different seasons. So, and in this case, it's going to have to just, and as I had talked with both of the officers of those organizations. We only have so much space, we have to work together. We have to work together on it. So I think with that, given the circumstances, we can compromise and the city can make a compromise.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Giselle?
No,
Nothing? Nothing?
no.
Really? Okay. Evelyn? That's it?
That's it.
I just had a wide question. 4th of July, is our fountain at the park, the front, gonna be going?
It's gonna be going. We ordered the pump and everything. We're just trying to get the electrical and everything over in the supply tank, because we're gonna have to build some kind of a tank at the bottom to actually recirculate the water. But we are gonna have the fountain going Monday morning. He's gonna kick it on, or Sunday afternoon, so we can actually get some water going down. But it will be running all that day.
Very good, thank you.
I
Appreciate
did
that.
have one other question. On the swimming pool, I know that we had trouble with the privacy fencing. What is the cost on each one of those sections that you had to put up?
It wasn't very much at all. It was about 100 feet of it for like, I think it was like a little over 300.
It's the ties that are actually, it's, the fabric itself is not it's the ties.
Yeah, I know it's like it with banners.
Mhm.
If banners are just hooked on the outside, they come loose easy. I was just wondering if maybe down the line, looking into getting I don't know what they call it, the plastic, the plastic that runs through the chain link, actually, the wool sheets, because those wouldn't blow out. I mean, they'd be there until the sun or the hail or whatever, cracked them and messed them up. You wouldn't have to deal with the issue of.
Yeah, I plan on getting a privacy screen where it has like flaps,
Mhm.
but basically I replaced what was needed. I didn't replace the whole thing, so I didn't want it to look like mismatching or anything like that.
Well, I know if you look over towards Battle Energy, they put up a blue privacy fence around their place with those slats. And I mean, it looks really nice, and it will last for a long time without having any wind damage to it.
Yeah.
So,
Has the
I just
lighting
wanna bring
been
that up.
fixed at the pool? Has the light been fixed?
The lighting? Or are you talking about like the pool party lighting on the outside, or just the lights in by the concession stand? Or not the concessions, where the cashier's at? Because basically everything's done.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just a couple lights on the outside, like, front, there's like 4 lights, and 2 are working and 2 aren't. That's the only thing that's not working out there now.
Because it was dark. It's not, that pool's not very lighted. I mean, I had it from 4 to 9 o'clock, and when it was 7 or 8 o'clock, it's not very lighted. Like, it's hard to see in there.
I think we talked about that before, about, street lights, getting more street lights, see if we can, could put more street lights around it.
Yeah, there's 3 in all.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to security light posts, I guess that's what you would call them.
Yeah.
But they're not very high at all. There's only 3 up there, but they're working. Fixed them probably like a month ago.
I just think maybe along the lines, not anytime soon, but maybe add to our budget to add additional lighting. I mean, I think if you have a party from like 7 to 9, and if you have little ones, I think it'd be hard for your lifeguards to actually be able to spot everyone that's in there if it's not very lighted.
Well, and even if when it's closed, would be better to have more lighting to prevent vandalism and stuff like that
I just
too.
think a little bit more lighting would be good for that.
Okay. So James, is it your recommendation that we approve this to be recommended or forwarded to the city commission as presented?
Yes, sir, and that's my recommendation. I'll look into the background question, and also, in the event of an injury, do we need to be notified whether it's a
Okay.
concussion or what? The backgrounds and the injuries, and have something to report. But I'll follow up with Patrick on that.
It's in there about requiring having insurance, right? Little
Yes.
insurance on kids and insurance on the
It's
field
general
itself.
liability insurance. It's not saying on the children, it's just you have to have general liability insurance. But it's not requiring medical insurance per kid.
Because we purchased 2 insurance, and it's like, we as a whole, like softball, baseball, soccer, we all go in it together, so it's cheaper. And that's for the fields, like if someone was to get hurt, but I also purchase it for each kid, so if someone does get hurt out there, it's a secondary to their insurance.
We would only require the primary insurance. The secondary, that would be nice, but I don't know what that adds to the player fee. But all we require is just, the general liability of the field use.
Any other discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the athletic facility use policy and agreement as presented, to be presented to the city commission board. We have a second. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Now, since you were speaking of the Indian that had the tear in his eye on the field, Avenue Park, during lunchtime, there's a group that goes over there and gives out free lunches. Yeah, and I know there's nothing you can actually do, but maybe ask them to tell the people they give the lunches to, please put their trash in the trash can instead of just throwing it on the ground. Thank God we got pictures over there, because hold it in there, but
Right. We'll do that.
I just want to make a comment to Rubio, for the season. We started our season in April all the way through mid-June. I still have actually kids practicing out there every night, because this year we added all-stars to our divisions. So they will play at the end of this month in Hobbs. But the kids are actually still practicing, and the fields are mowed. I mean, the fields are still in very good condition. You guys did a great job out there. Every time I called Rubio, if there was an issue, he took care of it. But I'm happy to say that I was very pleased this year with our fields.
Very good.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you,
A
Rubio.
lot of folks came forward and said fields looked much, much better this year, so good job.
Anybody else for public comment? Nope.
why?
Speak now, forever hold your peace.
On purpose.
All right, okay. All right. If we don't have any further comment, we'll call this meeting adjourned.